So,
Oh, I feel for you. I feel for you.
oh, it's okay. I did my best to ignore, but just some things can't be ignored. So it's like,
Okay. It might be just me. It's a little hard to tell in the StreamYard studio. Audience, please tell me. It sounds like like Scott's mic is up a little too loud. So let me know, audience, and we'll convey that message to Scott. Let's see what they say, Scott, before you turn it down.
speak quietly.
No, never. Be you always. All right. So you went there. Paint us a little picture. You did at least one interview I saw too. You didn't just participate in the forum, right? You went to a studio in Manhattan to do this?
Well, let's just say that the media interest, non-mainstream American media interest, has been through the roof since I got back. And I've been doing my best to meet, that which I can. And I feel a special obligation at this juncture to handle the Russian media requests, because I, after all, was supposed to go to Russia, and that didn't happen. And so I was juggling 6 different media interview requests that I was trying to make happen. And it all involves just squeezing in the time. And so I went down to New York City, and because the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum is a very professional place, we had to do a whole sound check, video check, comm check. So that was my first priority, is go in there and do that.
You say I'm a tough taskmaster, but what about their standards?
Oh, well, let me tell you what, though, Jeff. They booked a space in one UN Plaza, the Millennium Hotel. The only suite available was the King's Suite, apparently. So it was up on the 37th floor, and literally the way the building's constructed, it goes out to a point. And so at the tip of the point is where they set up the chair. They had the camera right here pointing at me. But on the windows on each side, on one side you looked out and you had the whole United Nations just laid out in its full glory for you. And I was like, hey, that's where I used to work. That's my building. That's the window I sat at. And then on the other side, when Maureen and I lived there when I was at the UN, we rented a place. The final place we rented when we finally got upgraded, we moved out of the slums, and we moved into this wonderful the 25th floor of this great building. But literally, when you sat down in our living room, you looked out over the window, and you had the World Trade Center, the New York University Gold. In front of you was the Empire State Building, then the Chrysler Building, and you could move on. And it was just all right there. So every night you just sat down and went, oh, Manhattan. And I sort of had forgotten that we had that view until I literally got in there and I looked out and I went, oh, Manhattan. And there it was in this. So whoever gets this suite literally has 2 of the best views of New York imaginable. Of course, they stuck me in a corner and then they shut the curtains. And I think the other reason why we got that suite at an affordable rate was that the air conditioning was out. So you come up there, and yesterday was just one of those hot, sticky, rainy, humid days where the sticky wetness is everywhere. So you walk in and immediately you're just drenched from the sweat. And then they put the hot studio lights on you. So God. I'm just sitting there going, oh. And so in addition to being tired, it's literally sucking the life out of me. I'm just sitting there going, and it was great. But I did that. And then I went and knocked off 2 interviews I could do with my camera. Then I had to go to another studio in New York to do that interview, come back when I thought I was going to get a nap, and I ended up doing 2 more interviews. And so, but I think, and then I have an article that I'm writing and other things that I have to deal with editors. So I was supposed to try and go to bed at like 6 o'clock and, because I had to be in that studio before 3. So I thought, maybe I could knock out, some sleep. Man, my eyes didn't hit the closed mode till around 11 o'clock. And then, you're always worried at that point in time, am I going to sleep through it? Am I going to sleep through it? So even though you're trying to sleep, and even though you set the alarm, it's like, what time is it? Okay, I got 2 more hours of sleep. What time is it? I got an hour and a half left to sleep. What time is it? Got an hour. So it means you got no sleep.
Yeah.
But anyways, that happened. I'm just in Marine mode right now. I'm literally in terminal exhaustion mode. So you could probably tell by my answers.
I'll tell you what, Scott, I'm going to use my gentle voice tonight. I'm going to be very soothing.
No, don't. I can take it.
All right. Well, anyway, it came off very well. One really couldn't tell what your whole surroundings were, of course, watching it. We just saw you sitting in a sort of regal chair, and it looked really good on the St. Petersburg end. I don't know if you were able to appreciate that. They had big 2 of you and big screens up, and everybody
saw
could
that
see
afterwards.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
in the place that I was, there was no screen for me to see, so I was just staring into a camera.
So you only had the audio and you couldn't see them?
I couldn't see them.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So I was talking to a camera, which is probably because when I can see people, my eyes take on a different thing because I'm to me they sort of come alive because I'm like interacting with somebody. I
It's
can
more
make
natural, Yeah.
Yeah, but instead it's like talking to a camera. You're like, I am talking to a camera. I am gesturing like I'm talking to a camera. So it didn't have the same pizzazz, but it wasn't bad. I watched it. I think I did okay for a guy whose brain wasn't working. I was, what happens when I get really tired is I can start a sentence very, very well, and I have my thought, and then about halfway through, being typical Ritter fashion, I've gone on 26 tangents already. And now I'm trying to bring it back to the end, and I'm going, I have no idea where I'm trying to navigate. So I'm just going to speak and speak and speak until ta-da. And fortunately, both answers I was able to,
Yeah, and that's all you get too. And you must have been aware of that going into it. When there's a panel of 5, 6 people or whatever it is, an hour or even a little less, I think was the whole thing.
Well,
obviously each person is only going to get a couple of minutes or so to talk.
Right. I was expecting 3 questions, but we were 15 minutes late rolling in on their end, not my end. So we didn't get started till like a quarter after, or 3:45. And so by the time the second round of questions was done, that was it. They didn't go to the third round. We cut it off because that's the last cycle of panels before the plenary session, and that's the big one where Vladimir Putin gets up and issues the major announcements of the year, kind of thing. This is how the world is going to change, and everybody's listening. So you can't extend through. I imagine on the day before, as long as there wasn't another panel coming on, you could probably have gone in and squeezed in that last question, but not this time.
Got it. All right. Well, tomorrow, June 8th, is USS Liberty Remembrance Day. And we have a survivor from the USS Liberty, Phil Tourney, who's been with us once before when you were having internet problems and you weren't on camera. So we just had you on the phone. So Phil will be joining us tonight at about 45 minutes past the hour. And also Ahmed, who is the filmmaker and editor who made the video that we posted yesterday in honor of the veterans who were on the ship that day, especially the ones who were killed or wounded. So before we get to them, let's try to squeeze in a few questions from our beloved audience. And
let me just ask Ryan to put that question up. You just put something across the bottom there by Naj somebody.
Somebody, Ryan.
Naj, about me doing a film with Michael Moore, directing a film. And Naj has been throwing in comments all night long, like if I could go back in time, would I do anything different about my time as a UN weapons inspector in Iraq? And then he hinted like, don't inspect for weapons of mass destruction. I'm going to be nice, Naj. I just want to remind Naj that Saddam Hussein's Iraq invaded Kuwait in August of 1990. Flagrant violation. Now, we can go back, we can play stupid games like, well, Kuwait was slant drilling. Yes, they were. Kuwait was ordered by the United States and Europe to screw around with the London banking to get Iraq to default on its loans. Yeah, they were. You're right. Oh, gosh. Kuwait purposely flooded the market with oil to keep the price of oil below $14 so Iraq couldn't earn enough money. You're right, Naj. They did all that. And guess what, Naj? Saddam Hussein invaded fucking Kuwait. All right? And guess what happens when you invade fucking Kuwait? The world goes fucking crazy. And the United Nations passed a resolution. You might want to look that one up because it's called international fucking law. We passed a resolution, the world community, that said Saddam must leave Kuwait. Can't have it. Not yours. Saddam said, fuck you. And when you say fuck you to America, America does weird things like mobilizes the fucking Marine Corps and the Army and the Air Force and the Navy. And we sent 700,000 Americans over to the Gulf where we kicked Saddam the fuck out of Kuwait. That's what happened. And then what happened is Saddam had weapons of mass fucking destruction. Chemical weapons, biological, nuclear weapons, long-range ballistic missiles. And the world said, disarm. Now we can get into it again. We can play stupid fucking games like, did they really want them to disarm? We know the truth of that, but it doesn't fucking matter, does it, Naj? Because as a UN fucking weapons inspector, my job is to implement the fucking resolutions of the fucking Security Council. And don't you ever fucking forget that. So stop playing games that somehow we did something wrong. We inspectors did nothing wrong. We did our job, and we did it pretty fucking good. So fucking good that we got rid of all the fucking weapons that Iraq was hiding. Don't ever forget that either. It's not like Iraq rolled over and played dead and said, here they are, man. No, they hid them from us. They didn't just hide them from us. They put guns in our fucking face and said, don't bother looking for them. And we found them anyways. So now back the fuck off, because I'm not in the mood to play stupid fucking games about Middle East politics dealing with weapons of mass destruction. Watch Shifting Sands. The movie's been put out there. Watch it. You'll know the truth. Am I happy about what the United States was doing? Absolutely not. Am I happy about what happened to Iraq? Absolutely not. But I will tell you right now, I will defend the work of the inspection teams that I was a part of and that I led. We did our job and we did it pretty damn well. So don't ever criticize us again. Do you understand? Did I make it fucking clear? Thank you. Now we can move on, Jeff. I just needed to get that off my chest because I'm tired of seeing dipshits snipe at the weapons inspection process who doesn't know anything. I don't know this guy from Boo. Maybe he's an Iraqi. But I'll tell you what, I know the Iraqis that were involved in this. I made in Shifting Sands with them. I know where they stand on this issue. And I will tell you this, I'll bet you a dime to a dollar that Naj had nothing to fucking do with weapons of mass destruction or the weapons inspections, that he doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about because he wouldn't ask stupid questions like that. And again, now, part two, I'll back off. But I told you I'm tired and I'm just not going to put up with it. Really not going to put up with it.
Don't fuck with me, buddy.
Actually, I think that was a strategic decision by Ryan to get you riled up. So maybe it would wake you up a little bit. It worked.
Maybe
he's clever.
Worked.
He's clever.
But I use my quote of the F word. I can't swear anymore tonight, so we're done.
I'm innocent.
Fuck
Scott.
the fucking fuckers.
All right, let's get to the questions from our beloved audience. And when I say our beloved audience, I don't mean Naj. I'm having trouble. I've got an issue on my end. Is that okay? Visible to everybody? All right.
Yep.
All right. Rebecca from Nebraska. How soon do you expect to see U.S. weapons strike inside Russia now that Genocide Joe has granted permission?
We've already seen them. We've seen Ukraine used ATACMS and HIMARS against targets in Russia. It's already happened. The question is, I guess, how soon do I expect to see them strike targets that could get the United States and Russia embroiled in a war? The interesting thing is, sometimes I do believe that there's a God out there. You see, I was writing this article. Sometimes I get frustrated because I start writing articles and then things happen, and the article should have been published the day before because I'm like, but I got lazy or something else happened. I didn't get it done. And I'm like, damn it. Everything I said was going to happen. I could have gotten it out yesterday and been the freaking genius of the world. Instead, I'm playing catch up and all this stuff. I was writing an article about the potential of nuclear war, which if anybody's been watching me over the last couple of days, I've been saying we are 1 millisecond away from midnight. It's all going to end. Goodbye. Until I watched Vladimir Putin speaking. Now I'm rewriting the article. I don't want to give away the gist of it, except that there's one responsible party in the world today, and his name is Vladimir Putin. Because it doesn't matter what Genocide Joe and the U.S. government and Zelensky want to do. Putin came out today and said, stop talking about nuclear weapons. Maybe he was talking to me. Ritter, stop it. Stop it, bad boy. We're just not going to use them. It's not, there's no reason for us to use them. It's not part of our doctrine. There's no existential threat. Hey, if America wants to have the Ukrainians attack us with long-range precision weapons, we'll just turn long-range precision weapons over to other people to attack America. We can play the game too. But then today, because he is the most mature, responsible player on the world stage, they said, we haven't made that decision yet. We haven't acted on it, so we haven't actually done it. Imagine that. Here's a guy, everybody's talking, including me, about the potential of nuclear war, get scared. And this is the guy going, we're not going to let that happen. I'm in control of this narrative. We're just not worried. He said some interesting things. I saw another one of these questions. This was a good question, so I'm not mad at the guy who asked this question in the chat. It was am I going to reassess, the war based upon what Abdi Al-Adanov was giving, the briefings he was giving. Look, Abdi Al-Adanov is a military man, and he gave a military response. He said that the map of the battlefield is going to change and that there's going to be dramatic things, and he felt that this war would end by 2024. But you know why military guys say that? Because they're leaning forward. Because he's saying, again, little aside, I was with Abdi Al-Adanov in a restaurant, and we were talking, and I made some stupid comment like, well, you're a general now. You don't really get to do much fighting. I pissed that guy off so bad. I mean, and you don't want to piss off a Chechen. And then after he pulls out his cell phone, just a general, not on the front line. He pulls up the video. It's of him. He had some of his guys get wounded who were fighting on the front line. They couldn't get the evacuation vehicle in time. So Abdi, the commander, jumps in a BMP with his other guys and drives it off to the front line, screams in with the BMP, gets out. He's got his, AK, and he's sitting there pouring down covering fire while he's telling guys, covering fire, go get the guy. Screw it. He goes and gets the guy, brings him back, covering fire. Boom, stuff's going off. He's laughing, covering fire. Guy gets wounded. He bandages him up, puts everybody in, and drives off. That's what we're dealing with, guys. This is the general in charge of everything who said, screw it. I'm going to go rescue my men because they're wounded. There you go. So he's the kind of guy that says, I know how to win this thing. We can go here, we can go there, we can do this, we can envelop, boom, boom, boom. And it takes casualties. And that's a reality of wartime. Vladimir Putin today said, we could end this war today. I mean, this is very easy to end, but we would take unnecessarily high casualties. And I don't want to do that. So we're going to slow it down. We're going to be patient. We're just going to let this thing ride out. We know what we want to achieve. We know that we're going to achieve it. We know how we want to achieve it. And we're just not going to we're not going to let a calendar drive us. So my new assessment, that's the bad thing about being an analyst, people. You make assessments and then new information comes in and you have to go, time to reassess. My new assessment is, let's just stop talking about calendars because Putin's playing the long game right now. He said, for instance, he's talking about Zelensky, and there's a lot of speculation that, again, I participated in some of this, not as heavy leaning forward as others, but when Zelensky, when his term ran out in May, everybody's like, well, he's been delegitimized. That means that the Russians are going to move in and replace him and all this kind of stuff. And Putin's like, we're not doing anything. He's there. It might, we're not going to get rid of him. America's going to get rid of him. And it might take up to a year. Scott, I disagree. The whole world, Putin, Xi, Kim Jong-un, Khamenei, all seem to be rational, except I don't know what you're disagreeing with.
I think he's disagreeing that Putin is the only sane one. He's saying some of the other world leaders are.
Well, maybe the only sane one dealing with this issue of Ukrainian escalation, because Xi, even though he's Chinese and they seem to run the world, Kim Jong-un, he's a cool guy, but he's just hanging out in North Korea, and Khamenei is in Iran. I think I'm talking about Putin involved in terms of the NATO equation. You're right. The other ones seem to be rational. But Putin he's doing escalation management on a genius scale. Zelensky the implication is, we'll let America get rid of him, and then when they get rid of him, we can deal with whoever they did. But if they don't deal with whoever did, we're not going to do it. So the implication is this war is going to go on into next year. So there we are. I don't know. I mean, I'm tired of guessing on these, not guessing, but I'm tired of making an assessment based upon data, based upon certain assumptions. And then the assumptions change because new data comes in. But right now, the Russians don't seem to be in any. I think what happened is they moved in on Kharkov, and they did what they wanted to achieve. They forced Ukraine to suck in all of their available reserves up into the Kharkov front, which stopped the Russian advance because the Russians only came in with a certain number of troops. And then the Russians are turning it into another Bakhmut, Avdiivka meat grinder, where the Russians have gone in, they stop, they're digging in, and they're killing everything. The other interesting thing that came out with what Putin said during this week was that, I've been talking about, 10-to-1 casualty ratios and things, because Putin used that ratio a while back. But he was using that as the 10-to-1 was had parameters of time built into it. Now he did an overall strategic thing. He talked about, there's an interesting term they use, the not irreversible, but the irrecoverable or something casualty. So it means you're either dead or your body's been so broken that you can't be returned to the battlefield. And he said that it's a 5-to-1 ratio, that for every 5 Ukrainians that are irretrievable losses, there's 1 Russian. And if you're saying 500,000 dead Ukrainians, that's 100,000 dead Russians, guys. That's a lot. That's a lot. This war is costing all sides a lot. The Russians aren't losing as much as Ukrainians, but remember, it took us 10 years to cycle through 58,000 Americans in Vietnam, and that broke the will of our nation. You guys think that the West is going to break Russia in two and a half years, 100,000 dead? And the Russians are like, screw it, man, 50,000 a month volunteering. The Russian people, they ain't backing down. This thing ain't going to end until Russia wins. So all the people out there that think that they can outlast the Russians, they can break Putin just gave a speech again, talked about the economy, let off with the economy. I keep reading. When Ryan puts it down there, I read it because my brain is slow. I can't dual process, but lush, I lost it. So let's move on. My brain just went.
Let's take a phone call. Scott is a little tired. He's losing his focus, but you are going to bring it back with a great question. What's on your mind?
Okay, I'll tell Scott Spokona Nochi later. That means in Russian, peaceful rest, peaceful sleep. But Scott, my question to you is this. You've talked in the past about drone warfare and how it's changed the battlefield. And you're going to know this among anybody else. How small can a nuclear weapon be? Hiroshima and Nagasaki, I guess they were like 20 kiloton. Can they get reduced to the point of actually being able to be deployed on a drone? So you would have like some sort of nano nuclear war where it's devastating in specific areas. So that's my question. Again, spokojnej nocy, Scott. God bless you.
Miles,
Don't say spokojnej nocy too much because I might follow your orders. I'm programmed. Remember, I'm a Marine. I'm highly trained, muscle memory. Spokojnej nocy. I'm out. But okay, nuclear weapons design. I don't think at this point in time we can speak of building a missile munition that can fit on an FPV drone. I mean, no, because you need a certain mass. It's not just the enrichment level, but to get to what they call critical mass, that means you need enough of the fissile material so that the neutrons start to interact with each other in a way that generates the reaction you're looking for. If you don't have enough of it, you're not going to get that going. Now you can boost it. And this is where it gets tricky because A, we're moving into nuclear weapons design. And even though I'm not a nuclear weapons design guy, I don't like talking about nuclear weapons design. And B, we're getting to a level of nuclear physicists that, you know, Edward Teller could sit here and talk to, or Sakharov could do this. Scott Ritter is a simple Marine. And I'm not going to pretend that I'm some nuclear physicist who's say, well, if we get enough tritium put in there, you get the fusion boost. Da, 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 da. But no matter what you do, boosting it, etc., I don't think you're going to, there's a limit to how small it can get. We could put a design in an artillery shell, 155 millimeter artillery shell had, you know, a nuclear weapon in it. Maybe how many Russians were lost in Afghanistan? Around 10,000. Maybe the Baba Yag is this big old helicopter, this four-thing drone that the Ukrainians use. Has got this giant noisy engine on it, and they've been using it to great success, knocking stuff out. Maybe you could put something on the Baba Yag. I don't know. I would hesitate to put something on a drone though, because drones, especially the ones that are dominating the battlefield right now, they can be taken over. I mean, it's an iffy proposition. You're going out there and you're playing a game. It's not like you're going to get to where you're going automatically. You're going out there playing a, you know, cat and mouse game. As you're going in, they're coming at you. You got counter drones. You got guys with drone guns trying to bring you down. Electronic warfare jamming. Other drones diving in and knocking you out. I wouldn't put a nuclear weapon on those things, because the key thing about a nuclear weapon is it's a weapon that is intended to achieve a specific result at a specific place at a specific time. And you start throwing it out on drones, you could lose control of it. Your enemy gets it. So I don't think you're going to see an integration of nuclear weapons with drones, but drones are changing the battlefield. And in some ways, the impact they're having on the battlefield is more fundamental than a Baba Yaga, than it would be if you put nuclear weapons on them. I watch it. This gets scary as hell. The Russians, you know, their T-90 tank, and they built this drone cage over it because, you know, you're thinking, okay, drone's going to come in, bounce off the cage. Then they put reactive armor all over there, so the drone comes in and touches the tank, and off it goes. Well, what happens when you're in the tank and you go, I gotta pee? So you open up the hatch, you climb out of the tank, you go off in the woods, and you're doing your thing. And then comes this stupid little Ukrainian drone that comes down, finds the opening, goes in, and goes down the hatch and blows the damn tank up. Drones are dangerous things, guys, and in the hands of capable drone operators, they can do the job. I mean, the Russians have said the greatest threat they have right now is Ukrainian drones. You know, when the Ukrainians apply their drone operators, who are very good, to a part of the battlefield, the Russians are just basically saying, when it's a drone versus a man or a drone versus a team of men, the drone always wins, unless the team of guys has some way to shoot down. The Russians are experimenting with shotguns, with nets. Some guys get lucky and use a machine gun or AK, but, you know, firing. Ryan knows this. You're getting that little tiny little bullet out there to try and hit a drone in flight. Good luck. You know, so when the Ukrainians flood the zone with drones, they kill a lot of Russians. They blow up a lot of things. They kill a lot of things. Now, the The bad news for the Ukrainians is the Russians aren't just flooding the zone, they're flooding the whole battlefield. The Ukrainians have said that from the moment they enter, there's no maneuverability, there's nothing. They have to go straight underground. And one of the experienced guys going, we're going to spend the entire war underground, because the second we lift up, there's a drone hovering over looking for us. And once they see where we come from, they come in and you're screwed. Because like I said, the drone stops. It's not a bullet. Stops, hovers, maneuvers down there, goes in and blows up. So drone warfare. Next.
Pick your city. Pick your city. Tell me.
Kevo Fuelen is one of our regulars in Ireland, and I saw what you said, Kevin, that our sound levels are okay. Thanks for that. He left us a voicemail, or left you a voicemail message, and a little bit loquacious, which I think may be a characteristic of the Irish. Not reaching the levels of Mark in Ireland, however, but let's give a listen to his voicemail message.
Hi, Scott. Jeff, how you doing? Kevin Fuelon here again from Ireland. Very disappointed to learn of your travel disruptions this week. Sign of the times, I suppose. Just got two short questions. They're again on Israel and Palestine. First, Scott, what's your estimate on IDF casualties? The Battle of Jabalia last week, that ended last week, Israel only admitted to 10 casualties in 3 weeks of fighting. There's Barbarol's bigger than that. I'm sure you'll agree. Second, I believe Israelis as a population are suffering, I suppose, intergenerational post-traumatic stress disorder, for want of a better word. Do you see any hope that they will come out of this fog and see that their only hope for the peace they need to heal from those centuries of oppression and the PTSD that's come after it is to form a Northern Ireland style state where Jews have 50% in the Knesset, Palestinians have 50%, and they kind of commit to building a new Jerusalem, so to speak. Anyway, hope your next travels go smoothly. Cheers, guys.
Thanks. On Israeli casualties, I don't know. There's logic dictates that they're taking more casualties than they're admitting to, and that there may be a reason, especially with Hezbollah in the north, because of the desire to avoid escalation, because the political pressure that would be put on the Israeli government to engage decisively with Hezbollah would be a lot greater if people understood how much damage Hezbollah is doing to Israel there. So there's good reason to believe that the casualties in the north are being, undercounted. In Gaza, I don't know, to be honest, on that. I think one of the problems with Gaza is that we look at these videos that come out because we're all prisoners of the same data set. I mean, Hamas releases videos. Well, Hamas only releases the videos that look good. Trust me, they're professional information warfare people. Hamas isn't going to have the video of the guy coming out going, Akbar, fires his RPG and it glances off and misses. They're not going to show you that one. I can tell you in combat, that happens more often than the direct hit. All right. That's the way it is. Shit doesn't work all the time, especially in combat. Hardly ever works. People are operating under the premise that every time Hamas pulls the trigger, they're hitting a tank. That's not the case. Most of those tanks have reactive armor. So even though you're using a tandem warhead, they slapped it. That was Hezbollah. They used a new weapon, send a signal to the Israelis that when the time comes for the full scale war, you won't have an Iron Dome. And I think the Israelis notice what they're not talking about right now. Invading Hezbollah. Why? Because they don't have an Iron Dome. And they're like, damn it, if we go in there and Hezbollah, we can't do it. But back to Hamas. They have a tandem warhead. So the initial reactive armor busts it up. Secondary explosion comes in, bursts through, hits the armor. And you might get some spalding or you might get some sort of concussion in there. But just because the tank goes boom on the outside doesn't mean the tank's going boom on the inside. And so a lot of these hits that we're seeing that look pretty cool aren't generating killed in action or to use the term of the Russians, irretrievable losses. You are getting guys with headaches, and you are getting some wounded guys. The big number that they're not talking about is the number of wounded. Everybody's looking at the dead, saying that's the thing. Hey, look, from Hamas's standpoint, whether you kill an Israeli or you compel the Israeli to be medevaced with wounds that are going to keep him from the battlefield, it's the same thing. The Hamas has taken thousands of Israeli soldiers off the battlefield, not necessarily in body bags, but off the battlefield. I mean, there's some estimates have the numbers up around 12,000. I don't know what the truth is, but I do know that the real numbers would demoralize the hell out of the Israeli citizens. So I do believe that the Israelis are not telling the whole truth about their casualties, because they'd be revealing things that they don't want to reveal to the enemy, to let the enemy know how effective their attacks are, and also to the Israeli public. Now, as regards your two-state solution idea, man, why don't you put together? And I'm saying this in all sincerity, because the Northern, a lot of people were critical of Northern Ireland today and the what's going on there. But you compare that with the late 1960s, early 1970s, and it's so much better. It's not perfect, but they're moving in that direction. Maybe the Irish should be the ones who take a lead in negotiating this two-state solution. Maybe the Irish get America the hell out of the way. We're not impartial negotiators. We have sold our soul to Israel, and the Palestinians can never trust us again. Maybe the Irish could come in and say, we'd like to teach you about the Northern Ireland solution. How you take an extraordinarily difficult situation. How do you get, orange and green to live side by side? Well, they've succeeded in Northern Ireland. Is it perfect? Nope. But you're not going to get a perfect, textbook solution out of what's going on with Israel and the Palestinians either. So maybe it's time for the Irish to throw their hat in the ring and say, hey, we'd like to take a swing at this. Maybe talk to the Chinese and talk to the Russians and see if there's a way to get Ireland in there as a neutral voice.
All right. I mentioned earlier that tomorrow, June 8th, is USS Liberty Remembrance Day, and that refers to the Israelis attacking an American ship back in 1967. And we teamed up with Ahmed and his team at Propaganda & Co. to release a video yesterday that borrowed rather liberally from a previous documentary made by Al Jazeera. And you can see it at scottritter.com. You can also see the panel discussion we mentioned earlier that Scott participated in this morning. And we are honored to have back with us Phil Turney, who's the president of the USS Liberty Veterans Association. But before we talk to Phil, let's take a look at a little bit of that documentary, and then we'll take
the Israeli. June 8th marks the 57th anniversary of the attack on the.
Oh, I thought that was the trailer. I think that's actually the full documentary. We're not going to watch the whole thing right now. Hey, Phil, how you doing?
Good, Jeff. Nice to be on with you guys. Scott, you're in person. Last time you were incognito.
Yeah, no. Good to see you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Well, nice to see you two getting along so well, because I know that Scott didn't quite reach the exact same conclusion you did, Phil, and some of other folks who were with you who believe that it was an intentional attack by the Israelis. Scott's not quite convinced. Why don't you guys get into a little bit about...
No, you can't speak for me. I can only, as an analyst, I can only go where the facts take me. And when I reviewed all the declassified facts, I went with there. But if you listen to me at the end, I never once discounted the things that Phil and the others were saying. I never once said that they were wrong. We didn't reach different conclusions. I simply, as an analyst, I can only attest to that which the facts give me. What I have said is that the U.S. government has not done the full scale investigation that must be done for the truth to come out. And until that happens, there's a whole wide range of options that that could end up being reality. And so, I don't want you to put Phil and I, in a boxing ring where we don't belong. We're actually on the same side here. I can't, as an analyst, go all the way forward. Look, Phil's not an analyst. There's the difference. Phil was there. Phil has firsthand experience. I'm a guy who wasn't there. I'm a prisoner to the data sets that I can evaluate. And I went as far as I could with the data that I had available. But I recognize at the end that there's a whole range of possibilities that exist that can't be either endorsed or negated until there's a full investigation. And the U.S. government isn't allowing a full investigation. And I think on that, Phil and I agree. The U.S. government has not done the crew of the USS Liberty. They've done them a huge disservice. They haven't honored the sacrifice by doing the full-scale investigation that needs to be done.
All right. I don't think I meant anything other than that. It's just that Phil seems more certain that it was intentional. That's all I was referring to. So why don't I let you speak for yourself, Phil?
Yeah, thanks. And, Scott, that's a very good analogy of what you said. You're looking at both sides. You're looking in the middle. You're looking everywhere. And that's what really honest people do. And whichever side it is, and I think you're exactly on the right side. I'm here in Virginia, Arlington now, with some of the greatest spies in the world. And we're going to Arlington tomorrow. But we do have positivity beyond a doubt from eyewitnesses and Admiral Thomas More in his memoirs, the More Report, Sacrificing Liberty and everything like that. But the real deal is America needs to give us a chance, as you're doing, Scott, to tell the world the real truth, because our republic demands it. If we don't have the truth, our republic will fall. And I don't think there's anybody else that understands that better than you, Scott.
Well, no, I appreciate it. And look, you understand it better than I do, because as I said, I'm just an analyst. You're living this tragedy. Look, I've been screwed around, excuse my language, screwed around by the U.S. government, 6 ways from Sunday, as Chuck Schumer has famously said, and all that. But, I wasn't on a ship where 34 of my shipmates were murdered by the Israelis. I wasn't on a ship where 172 of my shipmates were wounded, grievously wounded, watching, their lives bleed out from them. I wasn't on a ship that was attacked by a nation we thought was an ally. That is getting screwed. That's getting the short end of the stick. And, what you guys have been living with this for 57 years. Sometimes I feel like I wake up in the morning, I feel like I'm going insane about what happened to me 20 years ago or 30 years ago. To carry a burden like the one you're carrying, like you and your surviving crew members are carrying for 57 years. The fact that you're still here amongst us, that you're sane, that you're rational, that you have your health, is a testament to the resilience of you and your shipmates. And what would we expect? You guys are the goddamn crew of the USS Liberty. You didn't go down. You didn't sink. You didn't falter. You stood proud. You didn't abandon your ship. You didn't abandon your shipmates. You didn't abandon your cause. You didn't abandon your nation. Your nation may have abandoned you, but you never abandoned America. So why am I surprised that you're still here, Phil? I shouldn't be surprised. I'm just saying that it's a hell of a thing, and people don't. For people who haven't borne the burdens that you've borne, and I to a lesser degree have borne, They don't understand the toll it takes to live a life knowing that your government has lied about the service that you provided, lied about the sacrifice you made, and is blocking at every step of the way any effort you make to tell the truth, to get the truth out there. Because you know how, and you know this, Phil, how do we ultimately honor the 34 dead, the 172 wounded, and the survivors? With the truth. With the truth. That's all anybody ever asks, the truth.
It is, and that's what's happening right now, Scott, on your show, and the passion that you show for not just the USS Liberty, but America is commendable. America needs us. The country needs us to tell you the truth of what the real world is when your own government sets you up to be murdered by a foreign government, the Zionist state of Israel. And that's exactly what happened. Our own government set us up to be murdered. And that's a fact. That's certainly a fact, to bring us into a war we never belonged in. And it is imperative people understand that there's nothing's changed in this world that I've seen since I've been alive that will convince me that we're not controlled by another government or our Congress people aren't bought and paid for. Because nobody in Congress wants to touch us. We're nothing but lepers to them. We're liars. We're cheats. We're anti-Semitic Jew haters. We're not, man. We're just here telling the truth, and we get labeled. We didn't kill anybody. We didn't murder anybody. They did all the killing, and they took away our First Amendment rights and told us never to say anything. We go to jail, fines, or worse, death. That came straight for Admiral Kidd, a flag admiral, dressing us down when he should have patted us on the back. We got treated like shit before that. We kept our ship afloat by the grace of God. And then a flag admiral tells us to shut the hell up. Well, we ain't shutting up. Our country means more to that. Our 34 dead, we're going to celebrate tomorrow in sorrow. They deserve that because we don't forget. We don't leave anybody behind. We don't forget. We're Americans. We love America. That's what we're doing this for. Is all of us. And God bless America. I fight for this country again, but not under a government that's subservient to somebody else.
You know, Phil, I just want to say something. I don't want to get, you're like me, Phil. You wear your heart on the sleeve. And the last thing I want to do is get you riled up, but maybe we need to get riled up. But, you know, our Congress has abandoned the Liberty survivors, abandoned the Liberty dead, abandoned the Liberty wounded, as Phil just said. In Congress today, we have a congressman, I believe his last name is Massey. He served in the Israeli Defense Force, and he wears the Israeli uniform in the U.S. Congress. So we have an American representative who wears an Israeli uniform, the uniform of the nation that attacked the USS Liberty, that killed 34 Americans, wounded 172. He wears that uniform in the U.S. Congress without any penalty. And he advocates, and this is the part that really gets me, if your blood isn't boiling about a congressman wearing the uniform of the Israeli Defense Force while he's in Congress doing his job, then the next one should. He is advocating, because right now there's 20,000 American citizens fighting for the Israeli Defense Force today in Gaza and against Hezbollah, 20,000. And he is basically saying that the Congress needs to extend to these 20,000 Israeli Defense Force fighters who hold an American passport the same rights and privileges that are enjoyed by American reservists and National Guardsmen who get called up and have to leave their jobs, and their jobs are supposed to be protected for them. So Congress is willing to do the unthinkable, which is to extend rights and privileges that accrue solely to American service members and extend them to Americans serving the Israeli Defense Force. That should sicken you. But what should really sicken you is that Congress is bending over backwards to appease the Israeli lobby while they continue to stifle the search for the truth about the USS Liberty and the murder of 34 American sailors. If people don't start getting pissed off, I mean, this is the kind of stuff that should have all of America up in arms. My God, if you don't stand for American dead, you stand for nothing. These 34 died serving their country. They died in a secret war that not too many people know about. Even today, when I was digging through the archives, there's so much. I mean, you go into some of these reports and entire pages are removed. And I'm somebody who's a historian and I understand the value of words. And when you remove entire pages from consideration by the public, that makes you say, you know, there's that old Monty Python skit, the things that make you go, and that's one of them. Why don't you want us to know about that? Is it about classified? Well, I'll tell you another thing too. 1967, you guys may have been doing some top of the line stuff in 1967 in terms of technology, but it ain't top of the line today. And so what are we protecting? What are we protecting? You know, when back then, you know, they would take the UHF and VHF signals and they would bring them together. And one of the great things that the Liberty could do is to break those signals apart. Well, gosh, guys, hardly anybody uses those anymore. That's old school stuff. What are you protecting? What are you protecting? Are you protecting how we collected intelligence? Are you protecting what intelligence we were collecting? Are you protecting the specifics of the intelligence that was collected? We don't know. That's the big thing. We're asked to draw conclusions based upon an incomplete record, a record that has been, what has been put before us has not been done by Phil. I would love Phil and the others, because you know what, Phil, I can guarantee you this too. I say this because we're cut from the same piece of cloth. You would never hurt America. You would never go out of your way to hurt America. So if I put in front of you the entire Liberty archive, and I said, Phil, declassify that which you need to tell the truth. But remember, we need to protect American national security interests too, that we don't want to put anything out there that, to give you an example, when Edward Snowden released all sorts of documents about the violations of the Fourth Amendment, I will never condemn Edward Snowden for doing that, because the moment we have U.S. intelligence services violating the Fourth Amendment rights of Americans, we got a big problem. But there was some stuff that was released through Snowden that should never have been released, because it didn't further the argument. All it did, though, is give away capabilities to, enemy. So I think, Phil, I trust you and your shipmates to go through this material and say, yeah, we don't need to say this. We don't need to say that. We don't need to say this, but we do need to say this. We do need to say that. If I were in the U.S. Congress today, and Dennis Kucinich, if you're listening, Dennis is our good friend who's running for the 7th District of Ohio. Dennis, my God, man, one of the first things you need to do when you become a U.S. Congressman is convene a USS Liberty hearing and get these survivors while they're with us before you to tell you the truth, so that you can begin the process of subpoenaing the intelligence community to release the material that needs to be done, and get Phil and the others to form, one of these tiger teams to go through the documents and say, this is what we need to tell the truth. This we don't want to talk about because it hurts us. But this is what needs to be done. Phil, you guys are a national treasure, and we need to take advantage of you while you're still with us.
While you were talking, I flashed on a couple of quotes from a couple of letters, one of which is from a current member of Congress, Ed Case in Hawaii, who confirmed that there's never been a congressional election. Is he an ally, Phil, or is he just simply answering the question?
I think that he's an ally for exposing that there never has been an investigation into USS Liberty, because it's already been investigated by the Board of Inquiry, which was a scam in 7 days. So the Congress tells us that there's been multiple investigations. There's never been one, not one. And to get back to Scott about is it Brian Mast, I believe, in Florida, that wore
Yeah, that's
the
the guy. Yeah, Matt. Yeah.
and a good friend of mine is running against him, Rick Wiles, and he can't get anything going with the media because of the quote unquote uh, superiority of the Zionist regime, and to have a person, a congressman, walk into the halls of Congress with an Israeli uniform on, that is treason. That is preposterous. It's disrespectful. It is heartbreaking. Our country's come to that because we are not subservient to Israel, but really we are. And that's got to break. That cycle's got to break, or our country will break. And I wish, Rick was one of our guest speakers today, and I wish him all the best because he's best for America and he's best for our country. And Scott, I don't know if you've been in contact with Rick Wiles or anything like that, but he'd be a great guy to get in contact with.
Well, Phil, you just read my mind. Jeff, Jeff's the smarter guy of the two of us. I'm the guy that wears his heart on the sleeve and likes to yell a lot. Jeff's the patient, rational character who says, oh, nice, Scott, but no.
Okay.
I don't know what we do in terms of our, politicization, but yeah, let's get this guy on and let's boost his candidacy and let's get this guy in Congress and let's get that Israeli Defense Force uniform wearing son of a bitch out of Congress. He doesn't belong in the people's house. We need to get an American in there who believes in America first. And I don't mean America first in a jingoistic fashion. I mean that you're a representative of the American people, not the Israeli nation, not an Israeli lobby. And so, yeah, Phil, thanks for doing that. Jeff, let's see if we can make it happen, man. We should do this.
All right. Well, right now we have a question for Phil from one of our regular viewers, and it speaks to what we alluded to earlier, and that is Phil's belief that it was an intentional attack. This is a question about motive. I'll read it out loud because some of our audience is audio only on Spotify. It's from Mita Kalikov in Malmo, Sweden. Her question: if the attack on the USS Liberty was a false flag operation, what could have been the reason for doing such an awful crime against its own people? I mean, what kind of terribly disgusting plans must Washington have had that they needed to kill hundreds of its own sailors and sink their own ship just to justify whatever they were planning?
What a great question. The USS Liberty, as we all know, was the most sophisticated spy ship in the world. And they sent us there for a reason. LBJ and his cohorts, Levy Eskel, he was the prime minister at the time, and people in government, many Jewish people were there that supported Johnson. And by the way, Johnson was come from a Jewish background. I think everybody knows that. They don't, they should read up on it. But we were sent there intentionally, perhaps even the year before this happened, like I said before, but for Israel to sink our ship as fast as they could. As fast as, and they tried for almost 2 damn hours. It was a 2-hour attack with jet aircraft, unmarked jet aircraft, to hide the identity. Torpedo boats, machine gunning us, torpedoing us, shooting our life rafts. We were going to put our seriously wounded in there, and they shot them out of the water. And they took one aboard their boat as a trophy of the kill. So it was a pre-planned attack but we didn't sink by the grace of God. We didn't sink. And we're alive today to tell everybody what our country did. We don't, we really don't hate anybody. All we want to do is just to get the truth out because our country deserves it. And it's our duty as Americans. We're all Americans. Scott, Jeff, your listeners, everybody's doing it. We love our own country. So let's do it in truth, not lies. We don't need any more lies. We got enough going on now to last for 100 freaking years. So what you guys are doing, I'll tell you what, I bless you for it. I bless you for what you're doing for America, having me on. Thank you.
Well, we love and support you, Phil. And I was so happy to hear that you finally found a home for the monument. I remember when we were talking the last time, that still hadn't been settled. And why don't you tell us a little bit about who turned you down, as well as who finally said, yeah, well, we'd be happy to host this monument.
Oh, thanks, Jeff. This is a very great thing that started in my hometown in Cedar Ridge, Colorado. And Kathy Meskel was she did a lot of monuments and stuff. And I asked her if she would consider doing the USS Liberty, and I told her that it could get her in trouble because just of the content of it. But it's a true story. There's nothing anti-Semitic about it or whatever. It just tells the truth. But we tried to get the Navy to get it at the Navy Yard Museum. They turned us down. The National Security Agency turned us down. Cold War Museum turned us down. National Spy Museum turned us down. I could go down to Dog Catcher. They would turn us down too. But my friend Terry McFarland, he's a shipmate, a former board member. He found a post because he wouldn't give up and I wouldn't either. 4809 in Tidewater, Virginia. He said, we'll take it. They had a 100% unanimous decision by all members. We will take it. So it's in Tidewater, Virginia now. And think about it, man. We got veterans coming to veterans to help us. Our government didn't give a shit about us then. They don't give a shit about us now, but veterans do. And that's where our heart lies.
Jeff, could you put up those images again? I just wanted to point something out. Look at the one on the left. Look below at the very bottom there. You'll see 5 medals laid out in a ribbon. The medal on the far left is the Congressional Medal of Honor awarded to the captain of the ship. The medal next to it is the Navy Cross. It is the second highest award for heroism that can be given in a combat situation. The Medal of Honor is a combat medal. Next to that is the Silver Star, the third highest award for bravery that the United States hands out for combat. Then the Bronze Star. Now, the Bronze Star can be used for meritorious action, but in this case, it's a heroism ribbon. The last medal there is the Purple Heart. That is issued for wounds in combat. And then, just to certify the point I'm making, the ribbon you see is the Combat Action Ribbon. All right, we're talking about a battle here. We're talking about one of the most highly decorated crews in the United States Navy history, if not the most highly decorated crew in the United States history, especially if we understand that all of the heroism that we're talking about here took place in the span of 2 hours. I mean, the heroism lasted longer, saving the ship, etc. But I'm talking about the combat aspect of it. And we can't forget that these men were awarded the highest honors that the country can give warriors, and they weren't warriors in the traditional sense of a word. These weren't infantrymen trained to go over the beach. These weren't guys on a destroyer ready to lay down suppressing fire. They weren't on an aircraft carrier ready to launch. These guys operated an old cargo ship that had been converted into an intelligence gathering vessel, a defenseless vessel. That's it. They had some 50 cows on them that they could put up on the mount to, repel boarders. But you can't shoot down aircraft or shoot down torpedo boats with 50 cal machine guns. This is a ship that was not designed for war, crewed by men who were not trained for war. They were trained for intelligence gathering. And they turned out to be the most heroic ship in America's history. Man, heroes come from different walks of life. They always said in the Marine Corps, you couldn't really tell, you got the guy who lifts weights and looks great on the parade field in peacetime and pisses his pants and runs away in combat. And then you got the small, skinny guy who's drunk and getting in a fight, and he's just getting Article 15 and page 11 all over the place. And in combat, ends up saving everybody's life. You can't tell until the moment comes. And Phil, you and your sailors, your fellow sailors, the heroes of the Liberty, man, you were tested to the utmost in a test you never should have had. And you passed this test, Phil. You passed it with flying honors. That's why this memorial needs to be up there so people can see that and look at those medals and understand what those medals mean. Those medals are everything because they're more than just ribbons. They're the only recognition that our government has put forward about what really happened that day. The only true recognition. They couldn't turn their back on the heroism of the crew of the USS Liberty. They did turn their back on the truth about what happened, but they couldn't ignore the heroism. They couldn't, because it was so unbelievable what you guys did. So again, I'm just honored to be, I'm getting ready to break down and cry, man. I'm honored to be on the same, the same screen with you, Phil. I mean, you are living history. You are the epitome of what American service is all about. And I salute you.
Well, wow. Are you sure you wasn't there with us?
In spirit, baby, in spirit. I was 6 years old. But
No, that was very kind. But it was a ship, a divided ship. We had spooks. We had ship's company like me in engineering and damage control. But Scott and Jeff, when this happened, we didn't know the CTs, the spies, and they didn't know us much. We weren't allowed to talk. But when that happened, we became one instantly. And that bond hasn't been broken since. That bond has never been broken since. And I'll tell you another thing, Scott. These guys were the most sophisticated spies in the world, and they never revealed to me back then or now any classified information. Never. They will talk about the attack, and that's it. They never, ever revealed anything secret, as we were told not to talk about it or else. But it was amazing, and I still feel that way with a sea of blood and broken men and men dying on the tables in the mess decks. The mess deck was full of bodies, nothing but bodies. It was a sea of broken men, bleeding, crying, hurt. And they left us out there for 17 hours. They recalled all the aircraft. I mean, my God, what else could they do to us? And
so I have a question for you. I don't know if you can answer this question, but it's haunted me ever since I started doing the research. I'm a Marine, and so I every time I see U.S. Marine, my ears pick up. And there were Marines on board the USS Liberty, part of the CT crew and maybe part of the ship's crew. I don't know, but when the aircraft made its second attack run, I think they targeted the space where the CT guys were. That was hit very hard by the rockets, I believe. And it flooded. And a Marine helped bring people up. And then he went back down into the flooded space to recover other people. And while he was down there trying to save lives, a decision had to be made to seal the hatch to prevent the ship from the flooding. And so this Marine who was alive, he actually saved somebody, came up, he was alive. He made the decision to go back down, and then he was sealed in there to drown. And they knew that when they did that, he was going to drown. Do you know who that Marine was? Does he have a name?
Well, I do, but I got to clarify something. Scott, what really happened is the Marine's name was Bryce Lockwood. But I will clarify this. And the other two Marines were only aboard that ship for about 6 or 7 days. We picked them up in Baroda. They got blown to bits. They just got on that ship and got killed. But Bryce Lockwood did, I was told, brought out some other people, or one, I don't know. But I'm the one that opened that hatch. And I was one that was ordered to seal it.
Mm.
So part of the story is true and part of it isn't. But it really makes no difference. The heroism of everybody aboard that ship, including Bryce, was inspirational for all of us because we were over one, like I said. But yeah, Marines, these two, man, we picked them up and rode to Spain. And I'm not discounting the people that were already on the ship, but man, they didn't know what it was getting to. Nobody did, and they walked on them, and they're dead. They're dead.
So Phil, you were the man who sealed the hatch.
I opened it up and I sealed it.
That's quite a burden to live with.
But you saved your ship. You saved your ship. That's what you said. You were damage control. You were part of the team that. But man, God bless you.
I don't know if there's anybody back down there left alive, Scott, but I don't think so. I hope not. But it was flooded. They only had about this much airspace, maybe 8 inches. And the ones that didn't make it out, I assume, were blown to bits immediately. But hopefully everybody got out. I was ordered by John Scott. Well, let's seal it up. He's my officer in charge. So I sealed it up as well as he did. But by the grace of God, hope everybody got out there alive. It was alive. But
these are the kind of life and death decisions that you guys had to make over and over again that day to save the ship. You know, the ship didn't save itself. The ship was saved by you, by Phil. You saved the ship, and other people like you, damage control, going around there doing the most unbelievably heroic things. And I don't think America quite understands what you guys did and what was done to you. But even more importantly, what you did under the most extreme conditions to save the lives of your crew and save your ship. I salute you, Phil. I salute you.
Me too.
Well,
I remember when you were, I'm sorry, go ahead, Phil.
No, thank you kindly.
I was just going to say, I remember when you were with us a couple of months ago or whenever that was, I remember we were telling you that we're not going to abandon you. It's not just going to be one interview and then it's over with. And I was saying to myself, because I was very conscious of how you have been abandoned so many times in very consequential ways, I was asking myself, I wonder if Phil believes us. And we meant it. And so we will be looking for ways to support the cause on an ongoing basis. We'll continue to do it.
That's a promise. That's a promise.
I know it is. And that means so much. We've been abandoned by our country, but we're not abandoned by our patriots. And that's a great honor for all of you. It's a great honor for country. The USS Liberty veterans are not going to abandon our country or our patriots, because it's our duty to make sure that the real truth comes out, not all the bullshit that they're feeding you. You know, I'm sick of it. We're all sick of it. But I'll tell you what, because of the alternate, the media like you guys have, is the best thing that ever happened to the USS Liberty, or the mainstream media never helped us. The only people who come to help us is patriots like you guys. And so that's what keeps us going. And I can't tell you the gratitude I have for you.
Well, thank you, Ray. And Phil, if you could just do a favor for me tomorrow when you meet when you gather in Arlington with your fellow veterans, please pass the best wishes from Jeff and I and everybody who's watching this program. Let them know that that we're with them, we stand with them, and we will always stand with them, with you and the other survivors.
I was just about to say that. And Phil's actually with some of them already. They're having a reunion in Virginia right now. Yeah.
Well, I will do that. And for everybody, if they please think about us tomorrow. And then if you want to learn more, go to usslibertyveterans.org or ussliberty.org. You'll get to us, and you can learn a lot of different things, just not my testimony, but so many different things. So for that, I'm forever grateful that you guys are here. And I mean that sincerely. I might repeat it. The reason I do it is because I mean it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The honor's ours. Thank you.
Indeed. All right, Phil, send our love and support and respect to all of them. And we'll talk again soon.
I will do that. And thank you both. God bless you.
Semper Fi.
Semper Fi. You got that one right.
All right. Bravo Zulu. There's another one.
Bravo Zulu.
All right,
Bob.
Thanks.
Take care.
Bravo Zulu is a Navy thing. It means job well done. So there's the Bravo Zulu flags, and if somebody did something well, they'd run up the Bravo Zulu flags, and so it just became short. Bravo Zulu means job well done. And then Semper Fi, of course, is the Marine Corps. Semper Fidelis, always faithful. And even though it's a Marine Corps thing, the Navy sort of digs it when we say it to them. So.
Yeah, I don't think he would be insulted at all.
No.
I think we were both on the verge of crying a couple of times there.
No, it's terrible. Terrible what happened to these guys. I mean, and what's even worse, look, I was looking it up. There was a in World War II, in April 27th, I think it was, there was an exercise Tiger. It was one of a series of full-scale landing rehearsals that were done for the D-Day Normandy invasion. We just had the 80th anniversary of D-Day yesterday. And as the ships are gathering, they have this, the Ultra Code basically intercepted the signals from German S-boats, which are speedboats, that said they knew this exercise was taking place and they were planning to attack it. And so the high command had to make a decision. Do we put off the landing, the test, but then the Germans would say maybe their communications were compromised, because this was the Ultra Code that basically we were reading everything and it gave us a whole bunch of advantages strategically. And so the decision was to protect the fact that we had broken the code, not to do anything. And they let the Germans attack. 700 American soldiers were killed by the Germans. And in the confusion, because again, we couldn't, the command couldn't come in and tell people what's going on, 300 more were killed by friendly fire. So 1,000 Americans lost their lives that day because a decision was made based upon intelligence. And the only reason why I bring this up is that I look at those blank pages in the report, and again, as I said, as an analyst, I can only go so far as the data allows me to go. And I made a decision when I was asked to do this film that I would go based upon the official record. And I made that decision so that at the end I could say, this is the official record side, but we can't know the true story until we get everything out there. At no time did I want to be seen as diminishing the eyewitness account or the other information that's out there. I want to draw attention to the fact that you had dozens of pages with all the information removed. Is there an exercise tiger there? Is there something in there that says, this is why the USS Liberty was sacrificed. This is why they were put in harm's way. This is why this happened, and the other things. So, we won't know until this investigation is done. So again, Dennis Kucinich, if you win the 7th District in Ohio, hold the Liberty hearings and find out what the truth is.
And Ed Case in Hawaii. I don't know if you noticed that those are 2 letters from, again, I didn't know really how much support or how he feels about it, but he at least gave them an answer and confirmed it. So I'm sorry if I made it sound a little sensationalist. I wasn't really trying to drum up controversy. It's just that I had spoken to Phil privately, and I knew that he felt certain that it was intentional, and I wanted to tee it up for him to be able to say that. So I'm sorry if I made it seem a little too contentious when I know that you didn't intend it in a contentious way.
Look, I'm a professional intelligence officer, and my job is to take the official data and run with it as far as I can run with it, with as much integrity as possible. And so I did that. That was my goal in doing this. There's a whole bunch of other data out there that, probably if declassified would support and I have to say, I have to call it unofficial because Phil and the USS Liberty crew have not been allowed to be classified as the official narrative. They've been silenced, bullied, threatened into keeping their voices silent. So they are excluded from the official record. And that's a frustrating thing as an analyst. But the problem is when I sat down and said, okay, I'm going to do this, once I start letting other information in, I've corrupted the 4 corners of the analytical product that I was working on. And so I had to stay disciplined and only use the official record. But at the end, I was very assiduous in saying there's things out there that have to be considered that could change this narrative. And so I think Phil and I are on the same page. I think
absolutely. Yeah. I mean,
I think
everybody can agree that the main message is expose the truth, get the information out there.
The thing about Phil is he's probably tired of people like me, because he's like, it's been 57 years. I've had 57 years of intelligence analysts coming in and doing an assessment of the official record. Well, fuck the official record. Let's get to the truth. And Phil, I'm 100% on your side. Right. Unfortunately, I'm a simple Marine and I have to follow the procedures that I've done. It's muscle memory that says, define the 4 corners of my analytical product.
He understands. And like you said, you both are cut from the same cloth, really. I mean, you're both emotional, and it's a beautiful thing to witness. So anyway, that's that. Why don't we try to get a few more questions in the time we have remaining? And here's one from Sean Strickland in London. Why does a nation like Russia still employ human wave tactics reminiscent of those used in World War I?
Well, Sean, they don't. I don't know why you would say they do. At no time have you seen anything on this front from the Russians that resembles World War I. World War I was putting tens of thousands of men online in a trench line, blow the whistle up over the top, and go for it. That simply is not happening. Even in Bakhmut, the Russians were rushing forward with assault teams of 20, 30, 40 men. 20, 30, 40 men. That ain't human wave tactics. I don't know what your background is. I don't know if you know anything about urban warfare. I don't know if you know anything about warfare at all. But there comes a time in every battle where to take the ground, somebody's got to tuck their balls up into their gut and just take the step forward. And you're stepping into an unknown situation where a landmine, a grenade, a drone, artillery shell, machine gun bullet, or a rifle bullet could get you. You don't know, but you have to go forward. That's your job. You've been ordered to do it. That's not a human wave. That's just an assault. And the Russians suffered egregious casualties, assaulting heavily fortified positions in these cities. But it isn't human wave tactic. You don't know what you're talking about. I'm sure that question was not ill-intentioned, but it is reflective of the kind of ignorance that permeates the entire West when it comes to understanding Russia and the Russian military. Do a little bit of homework. It's not that hard to do the studies, and be careful with your source. Remember, you always have to go to bias. So if you're like, well, I'm going to read Chatham House, why the fuck would you read Chatham House? They're anti-Russian. I'm going to read RUSI. That's the Royal United Services. Why? They're already. Why not read what the Russians write? The horse's mouth. Jesus Christ, you wouldn't want to do that, would you? There's a lot of stuff out there. Read up on it, and I think you'll immediately realize why I've taken the position I have on your question, because it's just there's no basis in reality to sustain.
I don't understand this fucking question.
Dave from Pennsylvania, your favorite state. Have the U.S. and NATO effectively become a suicide cult whose dogma has strayed too far from reality to act rationally?
Yes. They don't self-identify as a suicide cult. The fact is, they would say that they're the exact opposite, that they are behaving in a manner that's designed to sustain NATO, sustain Europe, sustain the West against this Russian horde that's swarming in from the east. But they are, again, coming back to the question before. There's so much ignorance out there about Russia, about how Russia operates, what Russia's intentions are. How many people actually took the time to listen to Vladimir Putin's speech? I have been banging my head against a brick wall. In amongst very prestigious journalistic institutions. And I've been saying St. Petersburg International Economic Forum is the premier forum of its type in the world. Everybody pays attention to Davos, Switzerland, because all the stars come flying in their in their jet. Leonardo DiCaprio can talk about global warming. Then he hops on his Gulfstream 5 and flies in and stays in a hotel that's artificially temperature controlled. And he eats in restaurants that put out more shit and more pollution than you could possibly shake a stick at. If people understood the actual thermal and pollution footprint that takes place in Davos because of the World Economic Forum, they'd realize the hypocrisy of the West. Davos had 2,400 attendees last year. St. Petersburg just knocked out 25,000 plus. All right. There's no comparing the two. St. Petersburg is they used to talk about the New York Times being, the newspaper of record, and basically that, if it appeared in the New York Times, basically it drove the story for every other newspaper in America. What happens in St. Petersburg drives what's going to happen in the entire world over the course of the next year. So how many people actually sat there and listened to Vladimir Putin? Again, these rock solid journalistic institutions that are supposed to be all about, unbiased search for the truth. When I tried to explain to somebody that the Russians called the operation in Ukraine a special military operation for a reason, there's a real honest to God reason it's called that, not a war or an invasion. The comment that came up is, I don't speak Putin. So fuck you, Ritter. I'm like, really? All you showed is how ignorant you are. I can't say anything. But the point is, learn to speak Putin, because if you don't speak Putin, then you won't understand Russian. You won't understand what Russia's doing. You won't understand what's happening in the world around you, which is why you're getting every story wrong about Russia. Everyone. They haven't gotten a single story right about Russia. Not a single one, because they don't even know how to spell it right properly. That's a gross overstatement on my part. They do spell it correctly. But they don't understand anything about it. And they just poo-poo it. They don't want to talk about St. Petersburg. Well, let's talk about BRICS. Can't talk about BRICS unless talk about St. Petersburg, because St. Petersburg is shaping the world that BRICS is going to, be dealing with come October. Vladimir Putin today made some important statements, but they weren't listening, were they? Like the dollar is going away. No, it's not, Scott. The dollar can't go away. It's the petrodollar. It's very important, you see. The petrodollar has been at the heart of the global economy for decades now. And the Russians simply don't have the sophistication of psychological thinking, and they have the inability to craft, the mechanisms necessary to deal with the complexities of global international finance. Yeah, they do. And they're dumping the dollar and they're going with something that BRICS is going to lay out there. Because when Vladimir Putin says it, it's going to happen. That's the way it works, because he's not a typical Western politician who just says shit to make constituents happy. He actually thinks things through. So the world was put on notice that BRICS is going to be about a major change in the global financial system. Now, I don't know if most Americans understand what's going to happen when the petrodollar is no longer the preeminent, reserve currency in the world, but it's not going to be good. Have we planned for that? No, because we're not even thinking about it. Russia is the world's fourth largest economy. Now, that's amazing. We said that. Russia is the world's fourth largest economy. You know who has the world's largest economy? They speak Chinese. And yet there's a thing called the Group of Seven. Ooh, the Group of Seven. These are the 7 most influential economies in the entire frickin' world. These are the movers and shakers, baby. These are the guys that sort of came up with that World Economic Forum thing, Davos. They are the guys that make the world happen, except it's a lie, because if it's the G7, we know number 1 and number 4 ain't there, are they? Nope. I mean, Russia was the G8. Was the 8 on the G. If you're going to do it, Russia's the 4 on the G. The United States is 2. And other nations like Germany dropping the hell off. Their economy is shrinking. They're finished. The French, the Italians. It's a joke. The G7's not the G7. The G7 is the B7, bottom 7. They suck. And yet everybody in this analytical world out there just bows. If the G7 says something, that's front page news. Don't even question it. Don't even question it. Just print it as it is, baby. The G7 said it. Vladimir Putin says something. Oh, bullshit. Don't print it. Well, if you do, heavily caveat it with what? Questions coming from where? The G7. And you wonder why the West is getting its ass kicked, because they aren't focused on the right things. If you weren't singularly focused on what's going on in St. Petersburg last week, then you stop calling yourself an analyst. Stop calling yourself a journalist. Just call yourself what you are, a stenographer for whoever you think's paying.
Or a propagandist.
A propagandist. But, so this was a big deal, what was happening in St. Petersburg. It's a bigger deal what's getting ready to happen in BRICS. This BRICS summit in Kazan is going to go down in history as one of the earth-shattering moments. Things are going to happen there. The continued expansion of it, but expansion in a way that the West doesn't even know. Serbia was invited. Now, whether Serbia ends up going, I don't know. But after what happened at the UN, where they, I don't want to get too political here, but they made the Srebrenica thing an annual genocide event, and the Serbs are like, we weren't the only ones killing people, and yet suddenly we're getting singled out. What about the Croats? They didn't commit genocide. The Bosnians never committed genocide. Everybody committed genocide, or just stop using the word genocide when it comes to that horrible conflict. But the Serbs are done, And the Chinese went in there and signed a wonderful little agreement that said they have a strategic relationship. Wait a minute. Why doesn't Serbia have a strategic relationship with the European Union? Because the European Union doesn't want them. Serbia's been trying to be a member of the European Union since 2009. 2012, they were invited in. They had a plan, and the European Union is just using them. They don't want them. It's just a mechanism of control to get the Serbs to do what they want to do so that Kosovo becomes a thing, so that weakens the Russian position in Europe. Serbia's taken a hike, but you know who else has just said, screw the EU? Turkey. Turkey's been trying to member the EU a long time too. The EU just doesn't want to deal with Turkey. So Erdogan finally woke up and said, yeah, I think I'm doing the BRICS thing. Bahrain. They said, yeah, we're there too. Why is Bahrain a big deal? How about the Fifth Fleet has its headquarters in Bahrain? So the headquarters of America's Fifth Fleet in the Persian Gulf is in Bahrain. And Bahrain just said, we think that the Russians and the Chinese are going to do a better job of leading the world. What about the Indians? That's the one they always, it'll never happen. Scott, BRICS, there's that whole I thing in the middle. You got the BR and you got the CS, and the middle is the I, and that I is India. And India ain't playing that game, Scott. India's not playing that. India just signed a year-long contract with Russia for the supply of 3 million barrels of oil a month, paid in not dollars, not euros. What is that currency? Rubles. Rubles. Oh, maybe India is playing the game. I see. Look at that. Did you see that self-discipline there, Jeff? Did you see that?
It was rare. Hopefully there won't be too much of this self-restraint, because we like it when you let it rip.
你好，
That's the world's biggest economy. We could have gone and said hello to them, but
Hello.
that's a
Ni
lot.
hao.
So thanks, Ryan, for flashing on the screen that you can see Scott's speech, or not speech, but discussion, participation in the forum at scottritter.com. Also, the video that the USS Liberty video that we were discussing with Phil can be seen there in the video commentaries section. So
what happened to Propaganda and Co.?
Well, Ahmed is traveling, and he warned me that he might be late. So I guess he's even later than he thought. So anyway, we can have him on another time. Actually, why don't we tell folks we have a new partnership with Propaganda and Co. And they were the ones mainly responsible for this video. And there is the address of the YouTube channel, unless they've been kicked off YouTube. I was going to bring it up. I forgot to mention. Well, I didn't forget. I guess I was going to wait for Ahmed to come on. But only about 30 seconds into the video, it streamed at 10 a.m. yesterday, and YouTube pulled it down, censored it after about 30 seconds.
Free speech.
Yeah. And I don't know, Ahmed is because he's the account holder, he would be in a better position to clarify whatever they might have told him, which probably was something less than a forthright explanation. But in any case, his channel is actually still going, but that particular video was pulled down.
I just saw a question, because again, I'm not supposed to read the comments in chat, but I do. Said, where can you get a good source about the St. Petersburg summit or Economic Forum? Actually, if you just type in St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, there's an official site, and you go in there. You have to navigate it, but navigation's half the discovery process, because you realize how expansive and extensive this summit is. You go through the different panels, all the different subjects that they talk about. You click it, and it goes down. You have the different panel groups. Click each one, and you'll see who's in the panel, and you'll see what they're talking about. And you realize that, wait a minute, this is a couple PhDs worth of information that's being presented in the span of 4 days. Yeah, that's how big this thing is. And God, I wish I had been there, because damn you, Larry Johnson. Damn you, Larry Johnson. Larry was there, and now he's going to be out forever. I mean, Larry's a great guy. I love Larry, but I know Larry enough to know that he's going to be like, hey, Scott, how you doing? I have to tell you, man, St. Petersburg was pretty damn awesome. I'm sorry, Scott. Didn't mean to rub that in there and the salt in your wounds, because I'm joking. But I mean, Larry and everybody who went there just had one of the most unique experiences of their life. This thing was so huge and so well done and so professional, and so the amount of information that's there and the relevance to the world today. These guys who went there, Jackson Hinkle, Larry Johnson, Scott Bennett, Tara Reid's there. I mean, these are the Americans that I know of. I know Pepe Escobar was there, but but anybody who went, they literally took a giant step forward in terms of how well prepared they are to do their job as geopolitical analysts, military analysts, political analysts, economic analysts, to the people who didn't go there. That's right, Jeff. I'm back in the back of the line now. I mean, I was like top. I'm top dog. I'm in the back. I got to work my way back up front. But Larry will be up the front going, too late, man. I went to St. Petersburg. You didn't. But it was just, this was a great event. And go on, get that website. Here, what comes out of this will help your cause in the long run, too.
I mean, I agree with Scott.
We shall see. Yeah, Larry.
Well, not only the website, but RT is doing a very good job of covering the forum. They have a lot of videos of the different panel discussions that have taken place, and this would be primarily on their Rumble channel. I wanted to just follow up with you on something that we were discussing privately yesterday when we were talking about how we can get it up on the website. RT also has an Odyssey channel, and Odyssey can be accessed in Russia, but Rumble cannot. Does the English language RT, do many people in Russia watch that or not?
No, I mean, RT is Russia Сегодня. I'm sure I said that wrong, but
right.
That's they have a Russian language service. They have an Arabic language. The RT English, RT used to be RT America. I don't know what they call it now, but the English language service is meant for people outside of Russia. It's not meant to be the.
All right, well, that explains it, because I was wondering why would they put it on Rumble when Rumble can't even be seen in Russia, but that's because of what you just said. Okay. So if you speak English, go to RT's Rumble channel and you'll see a lot of coverage there. All right, let's get back to a few more questions before we wrap it up for the loquacious version. Saman, hopefully that's being pronounced correctly, from Tehran. It is said that ships with connection to Israel are being targeted by Hezbollah in the Mediterranean, with Houthis claiming the responsibility. Is this a strategy to achieve maximum military advantage at the minimum political cost?
So basically, you're saying that the Houthis are trying to take credit for Hezbollah's work. I don't know. I mean, there might be a couple reasons for this. One, to shield Hezbollah as part of escalation management, meaning that the Houthis already have everybody pissed off at them and they don't care, and America's bombing them and they don't care, and the British are bombing them and they don't care, and they just don't care. And so the Houthis are like, screw it, we'll take it. And Hezbollah is saying we're doing this careful escalation management thing, that we got to make sure we don't push the Israelis over the edge. So even though maybe Hezbollah is doing it, and I'm not confirming that's the case, I'm just running with the general narrative put out there, that Hezbollah will let the Houthi take credit so that it doesn't complicate the escalation management that's going on. So that's what I think would be going on if the scenario you put out there is indeed what's going on. The Iraqi militias, though, recently just attacked shipping in the Mediterranean too. So everybody's getting in the game.
AP from Earth. Can the Russian Federation use a very low-yield tactical nuclear weapon of 5 kilotons on the airfield in Ukraine? What's the difference between thermonuclear, hydrogen, and a nuclear bomb?
Well, again, I'm just a Marine, man. I mean, I read about this stuff, but I'll give you my Marine Corps thing. This is Scott's simplistic take. What you call a nuclear bomb or an atomic bomb is a fission weapon. Again, so when you bring enough fissile material together and you compress it enough, it creates a chain reaction and it can go critical and explode. Boom, out. So that's your basic atomic bomb. Then you have the hydrogen bomb. The hydrogen bomb is a fusion weapon. So you use a fission device to initiate fusion, which is basically you're consuming the heat is so great, it's being fed by hydrogen, and it becomes this giant explosion that consumes the hydrogen. I guess you would say the hydrogen bomb. It's much bigger and more powerful than that. And there's things you do with the thermonuclear is where you will boost a fusion device. So if you look at some designs that came out, I can talk about because it was declassified, but if you look, most people think of a nuclear device as being spherical, that's your implosion device, or a gun where you have a chunk of fissile material, and you take the heart of it out over here, and then you're going to fire it pop in here, and the impact will create the critical mass, the fission that you want. So gun device, implosion device. Fission splits atoms, fusion fuses out. Jared, that's why there's people out there who are smarter than Marines. And Jared is a person who's smarter than a Marine. Thank you, Jared. I knew that. I'm tired and I couldn't get that clever, but thank you. That he's 100% correct. So it's not the splitting, it's the fusing, which I think if we get into the combustion of hydrogen implies that, but you did a better job than me. So thank you for that. Yeah, they use atomic bombs as detonators. They use a fusion weapon uses a fission weapon as its detonator. But now we get to this peanut thing. And the peanut thing is basically, we'll get into neutron bomb in a second. The peanut thing is you start with a fission, but then there's other materials, tritium and some other things that are neutron generators. So what you're doing is you're boosting it. So you start the fission thing, then you get the boost. So you're going to expand the fission, and then you hit it again. And now it's like if I took gasoline and I put a puddle of gasoline on the ground and I threw a match on it, the vapor that's created by the evaporating gasoline will catch on fire, and you'll have a little flame there. But if I take gasoline and I spray it as an aerosol, and then I flick a match in there, boom, it's over. So you start it, the neutron, then you hit it again, and you get this gigantic explosion. And this would qualify as, I think, a thermonuclear device or a boosted fusion device. And that's as far as I can go. A neutron weapon, the whole idea of the neutron weapon is to minimize the contamination and maximize the radiation. And so you're basically taking a device that isn't going to have the same explosive force, but it is going to release energy. So the idea was we needed this back to get the Germans to agree to our nuclear plan in case the Soviets invaded, because we knew that if the Soviets came in with everything, our troops weren't going to be able to hold the front line. The Germans already said they're not going to let us hit Germany with the old school dirty weapons, because then farmers can't farm, people can't live. Scott explained 2, 3, 4 stage nuclear bombs, something like that. Thank you. Nuclear fun time. I'm a kid. I'm not a nuclear weapons designer. So, but the neutron bomb, the idea was that you would fire this in, and you could fire it into a village. It would blow up, and it might destroy part of the village. But the idea was to put in this high intensity radiation that would eat through the armor and everything. So all the Russian troops going through there would get hit with the radiation, and then in a day, all get radiation sickness and die, and they'd all be dead. But the soil around them isn't contaminated long term. And when the war ends, the German farmers can come back and they can remove the dead Russians, and they can haul off the destroyed Russian tanks, and the German farmer can get back to farming again. So that's the idea of the neutron bomb.
Earlier, Scott, you said that you're going to alter your message somewhat. You know, you had previously said, in fact, you made a video a few days ago saying we're 1 millisecond away from the nuclear clock. But I heard a rumor that you were scheduled to speak in a press conference next Wednesday that I think Diane Sayre is organizing, and I think that's the basic message of the press conference about this 1 millimeter sex. So are you going to reassess? Are you still going to be in that press conference?
Well, I am, and there's no reassessment. I think we're still 1 millisecond away, because all it takes, again, we'll come back to what I said on the Jimmy Dore show. We're one ATACMS missile away from thermonuclear war. What Putin did, though, is say, I'm not playing your game. All right. I'm not going to get into the, irresponsible rhetoric thing. He said, we don't want to use nuclear weapons. There's no reason for us to use nuclear weapons. So, we're going to be talking about this, that, and the other thing. However, as he said, there is a doctrine that requires them to use nuclear weapons if certain things happen. And if the United States starts authorizing Ukraine to fire ATACMS missiles against nuclear command and control facilities, then it's all over. So what Putin did is inject an element of, responsibility into a horribly irresponsible chain of events that's taking place. He is the control rod. Basically, what was happening is, the Ukrainian conflict was like a nuclear reactor that was it was going crazy. I mean, it was going to just spontaneously, it was going to become Chernobyl. And Putin said, nah, and he threw some control rods in there, and they're absorbing the neutrons and they're lowering the flux and everything's going to be cool. But that doesn't mean that the reactor still can't go critical and go boom. It can. If the control rods are pulled back out, and they can be at any minute, bad things happen. What Putin did is give me hope that the Russian end of the equation, because at the end of the day, thermonuclear war requires both sides to do things to make it happen, that the Russian end of the equation is going to have several more steps built into it. And so the speed in which the Russians go from zero to hero is going to be slowed down a little bit, because Vladimir Putin is the smartest man in the room. Literally, I mean, no one will ever do it, but the guy deserves, the Peace Prize, because if it weren't for Vladimir Putin, this thing would have already gone critical. I mean, Dmitry Medvedev, maybe his job is, I shouldn't pick on him, because I think his job sometimes is to be, the junkyard dog out there just growling and spitting, saying this is what Russia could do. Russia can get, because he's out there saying, sure, we're going to nuke. And he's not a minor official. He's a former president, former prime minister, currently deputy to Putin on the National Security Council. So, when he speaks, it's not like he's, it's not like if I were out there trying to speak on behalf of the U.S. government. I can't. Medvedev can speak on behalf of the Russian government, because not only was he is, but his words are very worrying. And what Putin did is he did adult in the room. Exactly. Putin came in and went, hey, yeah, thanks, Dmitry. But, all right, everybody sit down. Okay. Well, the Ukrainian government, President Zelensky has eliminated all viable political opposition. And so it's not as though there's an opponent hanging in the wings, waiting to pounce on a weakened Zelensky. At this juncture, there is no viable civilian replacement for Zelensky. He and his allies have created this environment. So, as long as the West continues to posture in support of Zelensky, from a political perspective, is relatively secure. I mean, the positions he's trying to defend are absurd, and we're going to see him come under increasing pressure as this peace conference in Switzerland collapses around him, produces nothing, as the West continues to flail in trying to come up with a meaningful, a militarily meaningful aid package. The military, again, we're talking about a very large military that has, very well established infrastructure. it's not a military that is going to disappear anytime soon, but it is being stretched thin, very thin, just like the Wehrmacht in World War II. It maintained a viable military capacity up until the very end of the war, but it was outclassed, outmanned, overstretched, and was losing across the front. This is the case of the Ukrainians. They lack the manpower, they lack the military equipment, but it is still a structure that's just not going to go away. You don't defeat the Ukrainian army overnight. But there will come a tipping point where the military professionals realize that all is lost, that there's nothing that can be done. There's no magic formula, no cavalry to the rescue that's going to resolve this situation. And at that juncture, the military will be called upon to make a decision. Do they follow Zelensky to hell, or do they try to salvage what's left of Ukraine and intervene to remove Zelensky from power? I think that's where Zelensky's greatest threat comes from, is the military. If he loses the military, if he loses the security establishment, then all is lost for Zelensky.
All right. As usual, you're a couple steps ahead of me. I was going to ask you what will bring about the end of the war, because if you listen to Zelensky, he will never concede anything. He doesn't regard Vladimir Putin as a legitimate person, even worthy of communicating with. But when you mentioned the government, is not the government of Ukraine really a vassal state of the State Department? I mean, if Joe Biden or Tony Blinken say to Zelensky, "You're gone," isn't he gone?
If the United States abandons Zelensky, then Zelensky is finished as the president of Ukraine. How that end game comes about, whether it will be assassination, whether it will be exile, whether it will be a coup, I don't have a crystal ball to point that out. But the moment the United States abandons him, and if NATO abandons him or Europe abandons him, then it's over, because that's the only thing that keeps him in. He is the conduit through which billions of dollars of resources, cash, and a material that can be sold on the black market finds its way into Ukraine. Remember, Seymour Hersh wrote a story that is shown to be accurate. William Burns had to fly to Ukraine in the fall, I believe, of 2022, and tell Zelensky, "You're stealing too much." The United States knows he's corrupt, but I think the number that he was skimming off the top was 400 million. And Burns said, "That's just too much. We can't hide that. It becomes too obvious." Ukraine is just one big giant con game. It's a money laundering machine. And Zelensky is that vehicle through which all this happens. So even though they're losing on the battlefield, Zelensky still enriches a whole bunch of very powerful people, including people in the military. And as long as that money's flowing, those people have a vested interest in keeping Zelensky in place. But eventually, and I think it's going to be sooner rather than later, his numbers are going to come up. We'll see what happens in July with this peace conference. I think people don't want to get ahead of the game, but when this collapses and the absurdity of Zelensky's position is exposed to the world, he will be told at that point in time that he has no choice but to find a path to peace. And if he can't find a path to peace, then they need to find somebody who can.
Here's what he said yesterday to the NATO gathering in Belgium. And it's only a 22-second clip. It's obviously from a longer speech. It brought him $1 billion. Listen to this, cut number 2.
Навіть вже ти бачиш точки.
Even from reconnaissance, you get maps, satellite images, but you cannot respond. I think it's unfair. But we cannot, and this is a fact, risk the support of our partners. And that is why we do not use the weapons of our partners on the territory of the Russian Federation. Please give us the opportunity to retaliate against their military.
Put up the Time magazine headline: Belgium commits $1 billion to Ukraine amid Zelensky's whirlwind European tour. What motivates them? Don't they see through him? Don't they know defeat is coming and is inevitable? And whatever this billion is, cash, equipment, borrowed, rented, not yet built, it's gone forever.
Judge, I mean, you're speaking like a rational man. These are politicians who have, backed a losing horse, but they can't, the race has started. You can't, your ticket's been purchased. You can't go in and say, I choose a different number. And these are politicians who can't admit that they were wrong on something as fundamental as this. And so they're going to continue doubling down on this bet in hopes that some miracle happens that either changes the fortune on the battlefield, which isn't going to happen, or which they're hoping will happen, gives them a political out where they can blame, because the whole game in politics is to shift blame onto somebody else away from you. So they're buying time until they can shift blame onto somebody else. Maybe the United States, maybe Europe's waiting for the opportunity to say, this is America's fault. Why do you think all the pressure was put on the United States to get that $60 billion package released from Congress when they did? One of the reasons is Europe was starting to play the blame game, starting to say, it's not us, it's them. And the Americans, Republicans and Democrats alike, looked around and said, we don't want to carry that. And so right now there's a contest between the United States and Europe on who's going to end up, holding the bag when this is all over. But certainly they know that this is lost money. But politicians have always spent money on losing causes if it helps them politically.
Tell me if this helps Emmanuel Macron politically. Cut number one, Chris.
So how do we explain to the Ukrainians that we're going to have to protect these towns and basically everything we're seeing right now around Kharkiv if we tell them you're not allowed to reach the point where the missiles are fired from? The missiles, in fact, we're telling them we're giving you weapons, but you can't defend yourselves. So we stay exactly within the same framework. We think that we should enable them to neutralize the military sites from which the missiles are fired from, and basically the military sites from which Ukraine is attacked. But we must not allow them to hit other targets in Russia, obviously civilian capabilities or other military targets. When it's from identified targets in Russia that Ukraine is attacked, well, I think we have to be able to allow them to do that if we really want to retain our objective.
So he's saying, "I've giving you long-range missiles. Go ahead and attack military targets in Russia." Professor Sachs reports that the Ukrainians have attacked and partially destroyed some very serious high-end radar warning systems in southern Russia. Does the West not understand the legal and moral authority of President Putin to retaliate against Western sites when they do this and when they announce it?
Well, first of all, let's start with the two early warning sites. Those were attacked by Ukrainian drones, but it wasn't just Ukrainian drones that attacked them. It was Ukrainian drones married to American and NATO intelligence. These are drones that are pre-programmed. I think everybody has seen those fantastic shows where all the drones take off and then they go up in the air and then they turn on the lights and you get a walking man and then it turns into a whale and it turns into something. That's not something, somebody's not sitting there flying it. All those drones have been pre-programmed to fly that pattern. You can take a strike drone and do the same thing. When you get the intelligence about where the radar is, what the terrain masking is, you can have a drone pre-programmed to fly beneath the radar, masked by a hill, pop up here, come down here, come around here, and then show up at a place. Because everybody's going, why aren't the Russians shooting it down? I thought they had great air defense. Well, there's some things that you can defend against, like airplanes, missiles, cruise missiles. Some things you're not ready to defend against, like this new weapon system, this drone pre-programmed with the intelligence to evade radar. So the Ukrainians have done that and attacked these two early warning systems. I will say this, had those sites, these two early warning radars, been attacked by Scalp missiles, which is the French missile, or Storm Shadows, we would be in a completely different game. And this is why, and this is where Macron needs to really start putting his thinking cap. You give the Ukrainians Scalp missiles, but he knows that the final technical details of the targeting is done by French technicians on the ground using intelligence from French satellites. He knows the Ukrainians play no role in this whatsoever. And we know this because the Germans, when they had their telephone call intercepted about the Taurus missile, admitted this was the case. They gave up the farm. It's all being done by the French. Now, they were talking about hitting the Kerch Bridge. They were talking about hitting sites in Crimea. And Russia has basically said, we're not going to go to World War III over those kind of attacks. But if you start attacking inside Russia, it's not Ukraine doing this. It'll be an attack planned by France using French intelligence, using French resources. And Vladimir Putin has come out and said just the other day, he said, we know this. And the way he talked about it, he said it's space reconnaissance, satellites. If Macron gives the Ukrainians the green light to use French weapons programmed by French technicians using French intelligence to strike Russia, it's the same thing as France attacking Russia. And Russia has made it clear that it's going to treat it that way. And that's what Macron doesn't understand, is that Russia isn't bluffing. In this case, the French satellite will go goodbye. The French ground control station will go goodbye. And any target outside of Ukraine that was involved in this will go goodbye. And this is a very serious thing, Judge, because at that juncture, France will scream bloody murder. They won't acknowledge that this was a Russian retaliatory strike. They will claim that Russia has attacked it and seek Article 5 protection from NATO. And the moment NATO votes for Article 5, Russia will nuke everybody because they'll just assume it's now a general war and they're not going to wait. And so this is the stupidity of Macron. This is the danger of Macron, the danger of Schultz, the danger of Richie Sunak. This is the danger of Tony Blinken saying the same stupid thing. We're going to give them a green light. Don't they know that the Russians know that all of the intelligence that goes into these precise weapon systems aren't done by Ukraine? Ukraine lacks the technical capacity to program these weapons. All Ukraine does is launch them, but every other aspect of this weapon was done by other nations. That, and here's the other thing too. Macron shows the map with Russia. He said, we must strike these. I have a very bad French accent. I won't even try. These sites up here. Doesn't he realize that in the Kremlin, there's a Russian general that says, look at Poland, look at the Baltics, look at France, look at Germany, look at England, look at Romania, look at Italy. These are all places where the Ukrainians do things that would normally be subjected to strike. They were just in Belgium. Do they not know that when a Ukrainian pilot is being trained at a Belgian airfield on weapon systems that are designed to be used against the Russians, that is a legitimate target? And so if they start attacking Russia and say, well, Ukraine has a right to strike those targets, you're sort of saying that Russia now has a right to strike all of Europe. This is the stupidity of the West. We just don't comprehend how serious this game is and why we're playing, brain-teasing games at this stage in the conflict is beyond me. The time to have done this was at the beginning of the conflict when maybe you could have made a difference. But right now, Russia is so far ahead of everybody. They've lapped the field 15 times. There will be no catching up, and all you're doing is committing suicide.
Here's President Putin saying exactly what you said. Now, this is part of a long press conference. It's just a 20-second clip, but it's the essence of what he said and what you just summarized. Cut number 4.
Representatives of NATO countries, especially in Europe, especially in small countries, they should be aware of what they are playing with before talking about striking Russian territory. In general, this constant escalation can lead to serious consequences.
He doesn't bluff, does he?
No, there's no bluffing Putin. He's the most responsible leader on the world stage today when it comes to avoidance of conflict escalation. We have crossed so many red lines over the course of the past 2+ years. And Putin has come under a lot of political criticism inside Russia for allowing these red lines to be crossed, but he's kept his eye on the ball. The eye on the ball is, of course, victory in Ukraine. And one way that you deny yourself victory in Ukraine is to expand the conflict so that it's now not just a proxy war with Ukraine, but you are actually fighting NATO. That's what Ukraine wants. That's Ukraine's goal and objective right now, is to get NATO in this conflict. And Vladimir Putin has been masterful in avoiding that. But it's at some point in time, you reach that final line. And the final line is attacking Russia with these Western weapons. And I don't know what you heard, but I heard a guy basically saying, do so at your own risk, that you will pay a price. This is no longer a subject of debate.
You mentioned earlier that it is well known and understood that the French offensive weaponry in Ukraine is being operated by French soldiers. Is the American offensive weaponry in Ukraine being operated by American soldiers?
There are certain aspects of the targeting to receive the intelligence and all that. First of all, we're not going to give the Ukrainians access to the satellite, the encrypted satellite downlink. So as classified information is brought down from overhead onto a ground station, Ukrainians won't have anything to do with that ground station because of the cryptology involved, etc. So there's Americans there. Now they turn this into a targeting package. That targeting package will then go to the Ukrainians in the form of however they input it. It'll be done automatic. But there might be a Ukrainian technician who does that final stage, the hands on the weapons. We might not have Americans there, but we might. Again, I'm not familiar with the classification and the sensitivity of the data from point A to point B on the missile. But I can guarantee you that the vast majority of it, Ukraine will not have a single eye, ear, hand, nothing. They won't know anything about it because it's extraordinarily sensitive information. So we have Americans on the ground doing that, which means that we are picking the targets. It means that we have sat down and said, this is what we want to hit, collect the intelligence, download the intelligence, turn it into a target to get to Ukrainians, and then they push the button. But it's not the Ukrainians attacking. It's the United States attacking.
Spoke with Professor Gilbert Doctorow. He made some rather interesting conclusions with which I expect you'll agree. Here's one of them.
No, and I would like to take this back to something that's happened. He's made 3 visits abroad since his election or re-election. The first was to Beijing, the second was to Belarus, Minsk, and the third was to Tashkent, which is where he made the press conference that you've just shown. And I'd take it back a couple of weeks to his stay in Beijing. I think that his lengthy and very detailed discussions with Xi gave him additional confidence to proceed with the direct challenge to the United States-led NATO that we heard in his Tashkent meeting. Let's bear in mind that the United States, with Blinken, has made trips through Central Asia in the hopes of dislodging Kazakhstan, dislodging Uzbekistan. These are the largest, most populous and important Central Asian countries from the Russian orbit. The nature of the meeting that Putin had in 3 days, it was a day longer than was planned, in Tashkent, during which a number of very important commercial agreements were signed, including for the building of the first nuclear power station in Central Asia, a small one, but nonetheless, the first. This type of warm greeting, without any side glances to those who are giving the come hither note, like Mr. Blinken, tells you that Central Asian countries are behaving as normal countries would. They go with winners, and they have sensed that Russia is the winner in the war with Ukraine and NATO.
This is very consistent with what you said at the outset of this interview, Scott, that Putin is the smartest guy of the bunch.
Well, he's not just the smartest guy. He leads a very capable nation, a nation that has healed itself for the past 25 years, a nation that has tremendous resources. One only needs to reflect back on a speech made by Margaret Thatcher back in the 1980s about how powerful Russia was. She claimed that, of course, the West wins because of the strength of democracy. But, the point is Russia is largely self-sufficient in its natural resources. It can export tremendous amount of energy resources, a sustainable flow of income. And it has a leadership that has been stable for a quarter of a century, and it's built institutions that are likewise stable and capable. People don't understand Russia, but once you do understand Russia, you are immediately struck by the competency of the people who occupy every position of government. Extraordinarily competent. Judge, next week is the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. And what the participants at this forum are going to see is that Russia is the center of the world during this time. This is the most influential economic forum in the world, more influential than Davos. They will have a more diverse group of people. National leaders from around the world are showing up because they don't just want to hang around winners and be on the winning side. They themselves want to succeed. And St. Petersburg is the stepping stone for an even greater event that's taking place in October, which is the BRICS Summit. And you're starting to see, Bahrain, Thailand, Serbia, other nations are starting to gravitate towards there because they realize that the option that they've been given by the collective West, by the United States, it's not a viable option. Russia and China together are a combination that is unbeatable at this point in time.
Whose military is more capable? Whose offensive weaponry is more lethal? Russia or the West? I'm defining the West as Western Europe and the U.S.
In a conventional ground war, Russia has the West beat hands down. The West does have an extraordinary large arsenal of long-range precision strike cruise missiles and conventional weapons of this nature. So we are capable of doing serious damage to Russia. But understand that the vast majority of this weaponry has its capabilities because of connectivity with overhead. If there's a war between Russia and the United States, Russia has the best anti-satellite capability in the world. And they will shut down America's satellites, which means all of the weapon systems that we think are going to work as advertised no longer work as advertised, and we've lost that advantage. The United States and Europe, let's not kid ourselves, they still pack a punch. This is why Russia's being careful. It's not just a nuclear punch, they pack a conventional punch. They have missiles that can strike targets in Russia. Russia doesn't want that war. It doesn't mean Russia's going to lose that war, but no nation invites that kind of death and destruction on a civilian population that it loves. The Russian government loves the Russian people, and they've worked very hard for the last quarter century to turn Russia around to be what it is today. And you're not going to throw that away overnight and create the opportunity for the West to, destroy a lot of this infrastructure. So the West does pack a punch, but on the battlefield where the hard fighting is done, Russia dominates, and on the nuclear side, Russia is a dominant power. But you don't want to write off the West completely. This is a warning I give to a lot of people who keep saying, well, America's on the decline. Yes, America is. But, Muhammad Ali was on the decline when he still won world championships. So, we can never forget that the United States, we spend almost $1 trillion a year on defense. A lot of that's wasted, but a lot of it goes to buy very capable weapons that are in the hands of highly trained professional warriors. So, I don't want to be dismissive of NATO and the United States, but right now Russia has the advantage across the board.
Do Rishi Sunak, Olaf Scholz, Emmanuel Macron, and Joe Biden understand the essence of what you just said?
They do, but one of the big problems is that they combine this the Muhammad Ali and the decline phase cockiness with a lack of respect for their opponent. Ali didn't get knocked out until he got knocked out. And up until that moment, he didn't think he was going to get knocked out. We continue to believe that Russia is bluffing, that Russia doesn't have this capability, that their military, this is just a passing moment, that they can't sustain this. This is all false. The Russian military is extraordinarily professional. What they've learned on the battlefield has been incorporated by their troops, and logistically, and in terms of basic, the establishment of the military, Russia is equally as professional as anything the West has. But we don't acknowledge it because part of the game, part of the political game, isn't to deal with the reality of Russia, but rather sell the perception of Russia to your respective audiences. And so Biden and the Europeans continue to articulate a picture of Russia that's far from realistic. It's one that paints Russia as a nation that lacks the capabilities that we know that it has. and that's their job, is to create perception amongst an audience for political reasons. Because if you told the American people, told the Europeans the truth about Russia, you'd see attitudes change overnight. Once people realize that they've been lied to, that they've been misled, that there isn't the chance of an American victory, they suddenly, I think, because I just interviewed Dennis Kucinich the other day, and he said something interesting. He refused to attack the American people. I mean, he's a politician, it's a smart move on his part. But what he said is that the American people are trusting, and maybe they trust their politicians too much. And that's the problem, is we have people that maybe don't question their leaders as much as they should question. They believe what they're told at face value. And, but the problem with that is